Think of your biggest stalled goal. You're working incredibly hard, but you're fixing the wrong problems. You might say, there isn't enough time, or I'm not ready yet, but there's only one reason why your goal is stuck. You haven't identified your true bottleneck. In this video, I'm going to explain the theory of constraints and show you how to find your true bottleneck so you can stop doing useless work and finally break through. So what's a bottleneck? The easiest way to understand is with an example. First, we'll explore the concept of bottlenecks with a hypothetical scenario. Then after, we'll connect it back to everyday life. Okay, so let's imagine we're running a restaurant. We can model it with a flowchart. Okay, so here's our restaurant. We've got an input, an output, and 3 basic steps. So customers come in, we take their order, we cook a burger for them, we serve it, and that's it. There's only 3 basic steps, but we need every single one of them. If even one of these steps fails, you do not have a served burger. So how do we find a bottleneck? First thing we have to do is measure things. So let's put some numbers out there. Let's say we've got 3 customers coming in per minute, and we're taking 3 orders per minute. Let's say the cook's only able to cook 1 burger per minute though, and the waiters can serve maybe 2 per minute. So here, it's very obvious to see where the bottleneck is, right? If you can only cook 1 burger per minute, then you can only output 1 burger to a customer. Doesn't matter how many orders you take, doesn't matter how fast you can serve them. The bottleneck is the cooking. So what would we do about that? Often in life, if things are getting a little bit busy, we just tell ourselves to work a bit harder. We don't fixate on where exactly the problem might be, but we try and just do everything faster, everything better. But with an example like this, you can see that it doesn't really work that much. Let's say we're the waiter and we can see that we're not keeping up with the customers, and so we work extra hard. We put on some roller skates to serve the burgers as fast as humanly possible, and let's say we can take it from a 2 to a 4. Well, that hasn't actually improved the output at all. There isn't 4 burgers to serve per minute. In that example, there's only the illusion of progress. Things are going faster, yes, but the output is completely unchanged. So what should actually happen instead? Well, the waiter should not worry so much about serving and instead use their free time to go back and help the chefs. Do whatever they can, fetching ingredients or preparing things however they can. Just anything to help out the bottleneck. And same with the people at the front desk. They should not be taking 3 orders per minute if you can't actually serve them. Bring that back down to 1, and if you have spare time, help out the chefs. Right, the solution is not to keep optimizing every single little step, but figuring out exactly where you need to put the effort to improve the system. So it can seem obvious here that doing something like speeding up the waiters is a complete waste of time, but in reality, most of us make this mistake all the time. So here's another example. Let's say I'm a student and I'm studying for a test. Same as before, we have an input, an output, and 3 basic steps to take those learning concepts and turn them into actual performance in a test. Same as before, each step is essential, you can't skip any of them, and that means that there will be a bottleneck. So let's put some numbers out there. Unlike the restaurant, we're not dealing with physical things, so I can't actually measure them. So let's just say we have a baseline of concepts coming in that we need to learn, and I can understand, let's say, 20% of them. But I'm able to memorize 80% of them and apply 50% of them to actual problems. So bottleneck here is clear. It's a 20%. So maybe we're going to be getting 20% in the exam. Not so good. But unlike the restaurant example, when we're dealing with our own lives, it can be a little bit hard to figure out exactly where the bottleneck is. And what's more, if we find ourselves getting a little bit stressed or a little bit nervous, we can find ourselves starting to avoid the parts that we're bad at and finding comfort in some of the things that we're good at. So let's say that maybe I'm not understanding these concepts very well, but I'm able to write the perfect notes. I have all these flashcards and all my notes are color-coded and everything, and it's all so fancy. And I feel a bit more comfort from that rather than looking at the difficult concepts I haven't understood yet. So I might be tempted to put all my time and effort into that. But again, like the restaurant, no matter how much I improve my ability to memorize this stuff, if I can't actually understand and apply the problems, I'm still going to be failing that test. Instead of focusing on our strengths, we actually need to be focusing on our weaknesses if we want to make progress. So maybe instead of doing all those perfect notes, I should maybe put a little bit less time into that, bring that down to 50%, and start dedicating some of my time to actually understanding. Now that you understand that, you can start to do what I call stepping back from the worker's perspective into the manager's perspective. Sometimes you actually need to be able to accept just okay at some things in order to dedicate your time and energy where it actually matters. So that's the basics of the theory of constraints. Now, the theory of constraints has a 5-step process for how to fix a bottleneck called the 5 focusing steps, which you can see here. But in reality, the hard part isn't actually fixing the bottleneck most of the time. It's figuring out what the bottleneck is in the first place. So why is finding the bottlenecks in life so much harder than in that restaurant example? The answer is because in business, you usually have lots of things that you can measure. Say you've got a production line. I can process 10 widgets per day at this step. Oh no, I can only process 5 widgets per day at this step. That's the problem. In life, we don't measure everything. A lot of these things that we do in life, like studying for a test or practicing a skill to get better at it, there's no number to measure how good we are at it. And when we break it down into smaller steps, it's hard to tell which step is the one that's actually constraining us. So I've made 3 steps for finding the bottleneck in your own life. Number 1, goals come first. This is the prime way that we avoid the illusion of progress and instead measure what we actually are trying to achieve. And the more specific, the better. Our goals should never just be scores that have to be improved up and up with no endpoint. Our goal should be a checkbox. Did we achieve it or not? So, for example, a goal of making as much money as possible is not very helpful. But a goal of saying, I need X dollars of savings in order to feel financially secure is a better goal. Saying that my goal is to just get the highest grade possible is not the best goal. A better goal is to say, I need to put X on my resume in order to get my dream job once I graduate. So in that example, maybe you research your dream job and you find out you only actually need 70 or 80% in order to apply, but you actually need a certain level of experience. That would tell you maybe you should put your effort towards work experience rather than grades. The reason it helps is that once you reframe it to a pass or fail condition, that can protect us from over-optimization, so we know when it's actually good enough. Now, step 2 is to iterate. We need to break up projects down into cycles. So, for example, if we're writing a book, the goal isn't just write the book. The goal is to write 10 pages per day. So, in our student example, don't actually want to use these percentage signs. It would be much better if I could measure, say, the pages in the textbook. Let's say that I need to learn 15 pages of my textbook per week. Then it becomes not just one massive burst of effort. It's actually a cycle that happens over and over multiple times per week. The power of that is that it allows us to shift our focus from perfectionism to speed. And now that we're tracking speed, the limiting factors become much clearer. In step 3, we need to step back from that worker's perspective to the manager's perspective. That means we start to accept good enough everywhere. So just like that waiter who's putting on his roller skates to optimize the serving, we need to understand when to stop putting in effort somewhere, when to accept that it's good enough. So the way we can do that for studying, for example, is we set a time budget for each of our tasks. So in this example, if I see that I'm understanding things well enough, but I'm not actually doing a good job of applying them, I need to actually budget the time better. Let's say that maybe I was working 10 hours of understanding, putting 5 hours towards memorizing, and only 2 hours towards applying them. I can look at that and start budgeting my time better. Okay, 10 hours is enough, maybe just 6 hours, and instead shift that time over here to applying. If we already know we're pretty good at one of these steps, like understanding, setting a time budget can allow us to avoid that perfectionism and accept that good enough. And you can do this kind of time budgeting for other tasks in your life. For example, if you have chores to do, the manager perspective would be to say, okay, if we can get all of our chores done so the house is in a working condition using only 2 hours per week maybe, let's limit it to 2 hours per week. And the beauty of that is that when we get stuck into the work and we switch back into the worker's perspective, suddenly we have a more clearer goal, I don't just have to understand the pages I'm reading in the textbook. I have to try and understand it within 6 hours. The key idea there is that we need to balance those two perspectives of the worker and the manager. So, by mapping out our daily workflow like this, we instantly expose the single bottleneck stalling our progress. And this is the exact shift that cures perfectionism, stopping us from wasting energy on the wrong tasks and focusing our energy on the constraint we need to actually break through and achieve our goals. But identifying your true bottleneck won't save you if your daily tracking methods are still a mess. Click the video on screen right now to see how we use the Getting Things Done method to keep all our daily tasks under control. Thank you for watching.